They believed she would kneel. They believed she would break under the weight of Rome. But what they didn't understand was that they weren't facing an ordinary woman. They were standing in the path of a storm. And when that storm finally rose, it would shake an empire. In the cold, mist-covered lands of ancient Britain, long before the world was ruled by Roman law, there lived tribes who valued honor above life itself. Among them were the Iceni, fierce, proud, and unyielding. And within that tribe stood a woman whose name would echo through history. Her name was Boudica. She was not just a queen by title. She was a leader by nature. Tall in stature, with piercing eyes and hair that burned like fire, she carried within her a presence that demanded respect. She did not speak like someone who feared power. She spoke like someone who understood it. Her husband, King Prasutagus, ruled alongside Rome rather than against it. It was not submission, but strategy. A fragile peace designed to protect his people and preserve his kingdom. For years, this uneasy alliance held. Rome allowed the Iceni to live with a sense of independence. And in return, the king remained loyal. But Rome was never a friend. Rome was patient. And when the king died, everything changed. According to his will, his kingdom was to be shared between Rome and his daughters. A final attempt to protect his bloodline and maintain balance. But Rome had no intention of honoring that agreement. To them, this was not a partnership. It was an opportunity. Roman soldiers marched into Iceni lands without hesitation. They did not come as allies. They came as conquerors. They seized property, claimed wealth, and crushed any voice that dared to question their authority. And then they turned to Boudica, a queen, a widow, a symbol of resistance. They dragged her before her own people, not just to punish her, but to send a message that Rome was absolute, that no one, not even a queen, could stand against them. She was beaten mercilessly. Each strike was not just against her body, but against her pride, her identity, her very existence. And as if that cruelty was not enough, they inflicted unimaginable suffering upon her daughters. That day, Rome believed it had broken her. But what they truly did was awaken something far more dangerous. Pain can destroy a person. It can crush their spirit and leave them empty. But sometimes, pain does something else. Sometimes it transforms. It hardens. It ignites. And in Boudica, it became fire. She rose again, not as a victim, but as a force of vengeance. The fear that Rome tried to plant within her turned into fury. And that fury began to spread. Word traveled quickly across the lands. From forests to villages, from warriors to farmers, the story of what Rome had done ignited anger in the hearts of many. This was no longer just about a queen. This was about freedom. Boudica called upon her people, and they answered. Men who had never held swords stood beside seasoned warriors. Women who had lost everything stood ready to fight. Entire tribes united, not under a crown, but under a cause. And at the center of it all stood Boudica. She no longer looked like a ruler of peace. She looked like the embodiment of war. With fire in her voice, she spoke not as someone seeking sympathy, but as someone demanding justice. "This is our land," she declared. "They think we are weak. They think we will bow. But we will show them what it means to take everything from people who have nothing left to lose." And in that moment, an army was born. Not trained like Rome's legions. Not disciplined in the same way. But driven by something far more powerful. Rage. Purpose. And the unbreakable will to reclaim what was theirs. The rebellion had begun. And Rome had no idea what was coming. The rebellion did not wait. It moved like wildfire. The first target was Camulodunum, a Roman stronghold, a symbol of power, and a reminder of everything that had been taken. To the Romans, it was a place of order and control. But to the Britons, it was a mark of oppression. As Boudica's forces approached, there was no hesitation. No fear. Only purpose. The Roman defenses were not prepared for what was coming. They had underestimated her. They had underestimated all of them. And that mistake would cost them everything. The attack was swift, brutal, relentless. War cries echoed through the streets as Boudica's army stormed the city. Flames rose into the sky, swallowing buildings, turning symbols of Roman pride into ash. The temple that once stood as a monument to Roman authority fell. Camulodunum burned. And with it, Rome's illusion of control. Word spread quickly. Panic followed. This was no small uprising. This was war. The Roman governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, was away at the time, leading campaigns elsewhere. And in his absence, chaos took hold. Boudica did not stop. Victory did not satisfy her. It fueled her. Her army grew stronger with each step. More joined her cause. More believed in her mission. What had begun as revenge was now a movement. The next city fell just as hard. Londinium, a growing Roman settlement, filled with wealth, trade, and ambition. But when faced with the approaching storm, the Romans made a choice. They abandoned it, left it to burn. And burn it did. The streets that once thrived with life were reduced to ruins. Smoke filled the sky. The ground was covered in destruction. And once again, Rome was reminded that it was not invincible. But with every victory, something else grew. Confidence. And with confidence came risk. Because Rome was not finished. Far from it. Gaius Suetonius Paulinus returned. A commander known for discipline, strategy, and control. Unlike those before him, he did not underestimate Boudica. He understood the threat she posed. And he knew that this rebellion had to end. Not with negotiation, but with force. He gathered his legions, trained soldiers, hardened by war, loyal to Rome above all else. They were fewer in number compared to Boudica's forces, but they had something else. Precision, experience, and a strategy. The final confrontation was inevitable. Boudica stood before her army once more. But this time, it was different. This was not an attack. This was the moment that would decide everything. Victory or destruction. She looked across the faces of her people. Not soldiers, but families. Fighters who had chosen to stand, even when the odds were uncertain. And once again she spoke. Not as a ruler, but as one of them. We do not fight for power, she said. We fight for our lives. For our land. For everything they tried to take from us. Her voice carried strength. Not just in words but in belief. This is where we make our stand. And they believed her. Across the field, the Roman army stood in formation. Shields locked. Lines steady. Every movement calculated. Silence filled the air. Just for a moment. Before everything changed. The battle began. The Britons charged with everything they had. Their numbers were overwhelming. Their energy unstoppable. They fought with passion, with anger, with the kind of force that cannot be trained, only felt. But Rome did not break. Their lines held. Their discipline remained. Step by step, formation by formation, they pushed back. Not with rage, but with control. And that made all the difference. The battlefield turned. What began as a powerful charge, slowly became chaos. Boudica's army, driven by emotion, began to lose structure. And Rome took advantage of every weakness. It was not just a fight anymore. It was survival. The sound of battle filled the air, metal against metal, voices rising, the ground shaking beneath them. And in the middle of it all, stood Boudica. Still fighting. Still refusing to fall. But even the strongest storms do not last forever. As the battle reached its peak, the outcome became clear. Rome would not lose this day. And for the first time, the rebellion faced something it could not overcome. Defeat. But even in defeat, Boudica did not become what Rome wanted her to be. She did not kneel. She did not surrender. Because some people are not remembered for how they fall, but for how they rise, and how they fight. Until the very end. Rome may have won the battle, but Boudica became a legend. If you want to hear more untold stories like this, backhand index pointing right, subscribe now. Because the next story will be even more powerful.